Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. What is the Vikings equivalent of what the Minnesota Timberwolves just did last night?
Hey, this is Arif Hasan with the Wide Left Substack. I was unsuccessful in ending Luke's honeymoon early.
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. I lived.
Hey, Luke Braun is back.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
Welcome in on a Monday, a new week here at Locked On Sports Minnesota and the Minnesota Football Party. So glad you're joining us today. I'm Sam Ekstrom. You met Arif Hasan. You met Luke Braun. It's Vikings talk for the next hour or so. We're going to break down the schedule, which we have not done on this show yet. We did not have a show on Thursday. We're back after a week off. We'll also get into Robert Tonyan, TE1, ? And of course, the obligatory Wolves topic. Is there an equivalent to what to what they just did for the Minnesota Vikings? A Game 7 win against the defending champion in come-from-behind fashion? Yes, we'll talk a little bit of basketball on today's Minnesota Football Party, which is brought to you
some
by
basketball experts here, truly.
Yeah,
I've watched a full basketball game, pro basketball game in the last 2 years. I promise.
Least a half. At least a half. It's brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150. With any winning $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Luke Braun gets the first word today. He's back from his honeymoon in exotic parts of the world. I don't think you really had to deal with any shocking breaking news that came up while you were gone. I think you basically were able to fly under the radar without waking up to anything bizarre. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, no, I saw a lot of people talking about Jared Goff's contract. I think that was probably the biggest thing NFL wide that broke while I was gone. But otherwise, it was like Robert Tonyan and then some like deep roster shuffling in the schedule.
James Lynch is back.
That's kind of nuts.
Back.
I definitely thought he was gonzo. No relation to any athletes named Braun. The only athletes in my family are now well into their 60s.
I think it's pronounced Christian Brown, right?
Oh, well, he's wrong then.
Nuggets bench.
I agree. Also very annoying. Glad he's gone.
Yeah. We've got some serious Nas Reed momentum in the comments. This is definitely going to devolve into a Timberwolves show. I acknowledge that. But we're going to get into this Vikings schedule as well. Now, Luke Braun, this is your favorite thing to break down, so I want you to give your
just
best
love it.
on
Yep.
this. we got the schedule last Wednesday, and it is a little bit of a strange one because there are two stretches where the Vikings go a month without playing a home game. I'm not counting the London game as a home game. That is a neutral site game. Anything stand out to you first and foremost, Luke Braun, just in the way the games are ordered? Because I know that this means a lot to you.
Thinking about it in the context of like, when does JJ McCarthy play? Doesn't it kind of feel like they designated a moment? Like, doesn't it feel like they stacked all the toughest games up front? And then there's a stretch in like November where it's like, okay, JJ McCarthy can come in here and he gets like all these non-playoff teams. He gets like the Cardinals and Falcons. Like,
and hey, Chicago might be good. Who's to say, right? You got them, late.
Yeah, it'd be before that. It'd be like, it's like Indy, Jacksonville, Chicago. They go like 6 games in a row without playing a playoff team or a returning playoff team.
Tennessee, obviously Jacksonville, but then you've got like Chicago and then Atlanta again, and then obviously the division games come late. So you're gonna have to have Detroit late in the season, just the way it works out. But the toughest games are at the beginning. I think if you take a look at Vegas win totals, Vikings have like the 5th most difficult schedule. Although I saw that not comparable to the top 3 are clustered together, and then there's a pretty big gap, so it's not really comparable to the most difficult ones. The most interesting thing to me, and I very much dislike giving credit to Warren Sharp, but really fantastic work on the schedule release, which I didn't.
This is like his thing. Like,
yeah, killed it. So one of the things that he did was he did net rest days. So if you're if you're not coming off of a bye week and you're taking on a team coming off of a bye week, they have 7 or more net rest days against you. If you're coming off a Thursday night game, you have 10 rest days coming against a team that is 7, so you have +3. That's pretty cool, right? The Vikings are tied for second in positive net rest days. They're not taking on any teams coming off of a bye the whole season, at least according to the way I'm interpreting this grid. They are, coming off of a bye against a team that is not coming off of a bye. And so they have +12 net rest days. The Ravens are number 1 at +16, which is quite the edge. But yeah, I mean, the Vikings are tied with the Patriots and the Eagles in +12 net rest days, which is nice. In terms of total travel miles, the Vikings, I think, are in the middle. In terms of total travel time zone, the Vikings in the middle. And obviously, a lot of that is localized to their game in England, which that's a neutral. The Jets will have like a 2 time zone advantage, I suppose, or a 1 time zone advantage, I suppose. It's not going to be that big a deal when you're traveling that far. I find it kind of interesting. For example, the Packers have more travel miles but fewer travel time zones because their giant travel is south, right? They're only traveling 2 time zones for the Brazil game. So I think isolating to both miles and time zones is kind of interesting. But yeah, from a schedule release standpoint, independent of the fact that we already know who the opponents are, the Vikings ended up pretty positive here, it seems.
Let's break this down in a multitude of ways. Bye week record. Predict the bye week record. That's 5 games. Giants, 49ers, Texans, Packers, Jets. This is not the easiest pre-bye schedule of all time. And as you mentioned, this is one of those McCarthy on-ramps. If the record is 1-4 at the bye, and it's been largely because of Sam Darnold, that's probably your first entry point for the rookie. What do you guys make of the bye week record?
I don't like that scenario. I could see it going down that way, but that doesn't that's not starting him because he's ready. That's starting him because your season's going down the drain, which is not a great
Maybe that's
way
the
to
Nick
handle
Mullins
it.
entry point. Maybe
honestly,
Right?
yeah. If you're gonna bench Sam Darnold, don't put in the rookie just because he's there if he's not ready to go. But obviously,
that make a lot of people feel weird, huh? Right? Nick Mullins.
That would be very weird. Jaron Hall, get in there.
Come on, champ.
Yeah, but I could see them doing that. I just hate it when that happens with rookies, when it's they're clearly that happened with Justin Fields and Andy Dalton too. But yeah, I could see 1-4, honestly. The Vikings are a bottom 5 team in Vegas odds for a reason. They're major holes on the roster. Sam Darnold is probably week 1 starting quarterback. This is not going to be that serious of a team right now. And that's okay. They're nurturing a rookie quarterback. This is part of the process, but we're going to have to kind of grit our teeth and endure a fairly rough September, I think.
The Vikings on FanDuel are actually favored against the Giants. This is a change. I think they began as underdogs.
New, yeah?
The money is swung. Vikings are -1 against the Giants.
People
they also
hammered it.
They randomly have the London game line on FanDuel as well. You want to guess that one?
Sure. Jets -3.5.
Jets -4.5.
Arif nailed it. 3.5.
Oh.
Nice.
I'm not super confident in Rodgers' return, I suppose. To me, this is probably a 2-3 start, which is not enough to throw the rookie in there. Also, remember, this is a team that, in 2022 started off 1-4 or something like that. And they were like, nah, don't worry about it. And they were right. And so this kind of I'm not going to say manufactured resiliency, but history of resiliency is probably going to inform the way that they make these choices, which will allow them to be a little bit more patient with rookie development and stuff like that. And it'll also allow them to be patient when it comes to injuries. They were relatively patient when it came to quarterback injuries like Nick Mullen, for example, and Justin Jefferson. And they did a lot better than you'd expect given those situations. This team, to me, just strikes me as one that's just probably not going to rush JJ McCarthy out there. I do find it interesting that they do have the bye week after the London game. So my understanding is that every team has an option to take the bye week following London. And in 2022, the Vikings declined that option, as did a couple of other teams, because they wanted that bye week to happen later in the season. Now that was I think it was a week 4 London game for a week 5 bye week, which is why they declined it. And it is slightly different if it's week 5 to week 6. But yeah, I'm really curious if I don't know if they regret that decision or if it being a week later helped them or having
Probably
a
not,
quarterback
because they
change.
won the
won.
game coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, they changed their decision, which is why I'm, curious about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, or they wanted it later and the NFL was like, yeah, scheduling wise, we can't. So, I mean, that's obviously a possibility, but my understanding is, if they don't want it, they're not gonna get it. So I don't know. I'm just kind of curious about that. And I wonder if like having a rookie quarterback changed their approach on that one or not. But yeah, having that early bye week as opposed to having one later on, which is what, based off of what Kevin O'Connell was talked about in terms of bye week scheduling is kind of what he prefers, is interesting. And maybe having that rookie quarterback played a role in the Vikings' potential. I don't know if they actually did, potential decision to opt out or opt into that post London bye week.
And regrettably, they don't get like the half bye with the Thursday game much later. It's 2 weeks after the bye. So those are congested in the front half of the schedule. The second half of the season is going to have basically no breaks. I think 2 and 3 is the correct answer on pre-bye record, but I also could see a scenario where you get off to like an unsustainable 3-0 start because you're dealing with the Giants. Nobody trusts Daniel Jones. He's off a long layoff. You've got Super Bowl.
Rattle them off against the 49ers and Texans. Minnesota would be on fire.
Okay, but you're dealing with the Super Bowl hangover factor early in the season with San Francisco, and you're dealing with the sophomore slump of CJ Stroud. Like you've got all of the
Hey, week 2's kind of late for Christian McCaffrey will be hurt by then.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Shanahan's not as deep in his play calling bag in week 2. I think that and you get the home opener vibes. I actually think there's a chance the Vikings get off to one of those starts
so many half-cocked narrative reasons that they're going to take one against
Sam Darnold's revenge game. He's going to be juiced.
Yeah, he's a revenge game. Yeah.
we get the Sam Darnold 49ers revenge game as like a little warm-up appetizer before we go to London and get the real Sam Darnold revenge game.
Yeah, that'd be the real, and it'll be Sam Darnold revenge game, and also like the Woody Johnson Memorial game because he used to be the ambassador to England, so which I think that's great. But also, I mean, hey, if we want to like cook up some narrative reasons that the 49ers are going to lose, like what about the locker room trouble about trading their receivers? Like what's going on there?
Oh yeah, true. Maybe they'll still be. How do we feel about losing what probably would have been Aaron Rodgers' last time in US Bank Stadium?
Yeah, that stinks.
Oh yeah, that's too bad.
It was pretty nice in 2022 when the Vikings had 9 true home games and 6 true road games, right? Because the Saints London game was neutral, but a road game. So the schedule was actually super unbalanced in their favor. And now with the Jets switching, now it's been evened out to basically 8-1, which is a bummer. Yeah, that stinks.
Yeah, but they have the net rest days, so all's well that ends well.
Let's break this down in another facet. Toughest game on the schedule. I actually think this is hard.
I'm going to say the road game against San Francisco week 2.
That's home. It's a home game.
I'm reading this backwards. The home game against San Francisco week 2. Honestly, there's not these road. I mean, I guess the week 18 against Detroit is a concern.
That was what I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm a little less concerned about Detroit versus most people, but I mean, they're still a good team, so who cares?
Seattle week 16, but not that hard. It's really, there aren't a lot of games where I say, oh, they're done. They're toast.
Never.
And honestly, half the time they win those games anyway. Like at Buffalo 2 years ago, we all crossed that one off before the season, and they ended up winning.
That's any given Sunday. That's the nature of the NFL.
Yeah.
Best home game.
I think it's Kirk's return.
Kirk's return will be fun.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be late enough in the season where like it won't I feel like we'll have been focused on other things for long enough where it'll just be like, oh yeah, Kirk Cousins. Like
hey,
it won't be there. I don't think there'll be like the build up You know, like if it were a week 1 thing, we would build up to it for months and we would like over dramatize
Yeah,
it.
we'll forget to set out the glass tube full of rocks. We'll forget to have the flameless grill.
Because if you set out the tube, he
I-
comes and he gives all the kids gifts.
I can already see the storyline heading in. It's a battle for wild card position. The Falcons are 6-6. The Vikings are
teams in the
5-7. It's the NFL on Fox. I'm Chris Myers.
Oh God, Chris Myers. Yeah, I mean, like when you say best home game, do you mean like the most difficult one?
No, just best narrative,
best.
best vibes.
Yeah, I guess vibes wise, Atlanta's there because they should have like a good offense, right? Because they've got all these weapons that they've been unable to use because they've had like Desmond Ritter and Marcus Mariota at quarterback. But yeah, I don't know. These home games are mostly
it's a bad home schedule. I don't like it. There's not a lot of compelling.
I'm pretty excited for Houston, especially if like Tank Dell is not as hurt as it seems like he is. I mean, he like there's just a video of just him like sprinting like after he got shot, which like good for him, man. In which case the week 3 Houston, I mean, I love the vibes of that Houston team, right? So
right,
they should be explosive and fun. So maybe it's that one.
If you want, you can maybe get a functionally eliminated Vikings getting completely thrashed by the Packers week 17 as his annual tradition.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm writing a piece right now on like if Jordan Love is actually good or if we've all just been tricked by, late season stuff. And I'm not really loving the direction the piece is going. So he might be good.
I just kind of thought about this right now. The Goff contract. That broke while Braun was gone. That's kind of a big deal. $53 million per year. Guarantee, obviously not that much, but that's a sizable commitment from Detroit for a guy that he was great last year. But I also think he's got a floor that is not super high, and we don't know how he's going to age, and we don't know what's going to happen when that team gets a little more expensive and harder to maintain. I don't know. I love where the Vikings are right now. I love it. They've got a roster that is not there, but close. They're not starting from zero. They're starting the clock on the rookie quarterback contract. Packers are going to have to figure out the love deal as well. Like the Vikings suddenly.
That's true. The love contract was pretty short. That's coming up.
It's going to be really funny to watch the narratives on everybody shift now that quarterbacks have become more or less expensive. It does kind of feel like the media just follows like, well, they're not paying a quarterback. And that's going to like determine how
Which
forgiving
like historically is like way overrated when you compare it to the narrative weight we give rookie contract quarterbacks, right? Like
yeah, I feel like we
did well.
I feel like we had a few Super Bowls in a row of like second year guys or third year guys. Like there was always like someone on a rookie contract in the Super Bowl.
It's like Brock Purdy and like Jalen Hurts and then Joe Burrow a little bit ago. And
yeah, and then Jared Goff was in the Super Bowl, and then the Carson Wentz the year before that, and he was hurt, but like there was still credit for that. Like it was like a few years in a row of that.
But what about
versus Brady?
Let's not make it just about being in the Super Bowl. How about giving your team a chance to be in the Super Bowl? Like the AFC was littered with.
I've been told that's a loser mentality.
Well, yeah, but like
I've been told that doesn't count. I'm sorry, Sam.
But like
you don't
you take a look at like, oh my God, the AFC had so many quarterbacks and rookie contracts make the playoffs, and then suddenly those same quarterbacks signed big contracts and they continued to make the playoffs. It turns out the reason the rookie contract quarterbacks are good, yeah, there's the obvious reason that they save you money, but also the quarterbacks were good. Like that's a really important component of that. So like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, like, brought them there because they're good. And also they got to spend a little bit after Josh Allen signed his contract. It turns out they continued to make the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes signed his contract. The Chiefs have done all right, I believe, since Patrick Mahomes has signed his contract. So, okay. I mean, the Rams have the most top-heavy team ever, right? They traded for Matthew Stafford, and they managed a ring. So, yeah, it is an advantage. I just think we tend to overstate the advantage of it. I don't know. But, yeah, the thing with Jared Goff where now we're testing the limits of, like, because if the whole point is it doesn't matter because – the quarterbacks that we were talking about are actually just very good. Now you've got Jared Goff, who I probably underrate if I'm being 100% honest and introspective with myself, but is not a top 10 quarterback. And so if you're paying him like he is in that range, now you really get to kind of stress test the rest of that the quarterback contract theory. If he's not going to give you that advantage, maybe you just have to keep drafting well. But I mean, I don't know that the Lions actually are drafting tremendously well. I mean, this year, the consensus board loves what they did. Last year it didn't, but they're running victory laps when two of those picks worked out tremendously and two of them did not at all. I don't know. We'll see, but the Lions will have to keep drafting well, which is a historically very difficult thing to sustain a team on.
This is a big hit for my guy, Hendon Hooker. Crushing. Soul crushing.
Oh, man. Pick what, 68? It's Kellen Mond, man.
You're exactly
You making the
right
team by year 3, year 4?
No.
Probably not.
Is Robert Tonyan a TE1? That's the question I'm asking next on the Minnesota Football Party. I'm also going to ask these guys about a FanDuel prop regarding JJ McCarthy. No spoilers. Don't look it up because it's on FanDuel. FanDuel has a lot of great options for betting on the future NFL season, also the playoffs in the NBA and NHL. Bet the Wolves against the Mavs. You got that line in Game 1 coming up on Wednesday. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own if you're a new customer. Get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's a free $150 to spread around on money lines, player props, and so much more. FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count or your NFL futures. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, before we talk Tonyan, what does FanDuel know that we don't? They have not posted a Sam Darnold prop. They have posted a JJ McCarthy passing yards prop. Guess the over-under for JJ McCarthy passing yards.
Like for the season?
Yeah.
I saw it a while ago. I don't know how much it's changed, if any.
2,500. There's no way FanDuel expects him to start week 1, right?
It was at like 3,200 when I looked before.
Bar? What? Really?
Yeah.
It is not that any longer.
You just made like a Blues Clues noise.
Yeah, I'm confused.
You can also guess total touchdown passes for JJ.
12? I don't look. If it's not the full season touchdown total or the full season yardage total, I'm just throwing darts here.
That is part of the process here. I want you to talk through what you think a sportsbook would assume. I
think a sportsbook assumes that McCarthy takes over midway through the season. I don't think they pay as much attention to the bye week as the rest of us do. And because they're playing with like wide confidence intervals and averages and stuff like that, it's going to be tough. So I would expect them to rate McCarthy as a somewhat volumetric quarterback this year. Obviously, he wasn't at Michigan, but Kevin O'Connell throws the ball a fair amount. And I would expect that to be maybe like a 4,500 yard season for an average quality quarterback in a high volume passing offense in a 17 game season. You take half of that, that's like 2,300. And so that's kind of why I got to 2,500. But yeah, 3,200 is crazy to me.
I think it's the same logic, but they're going with like 2/3 of the season instead of half the season.
Yeah,
I think.
But this still requires 4,500, which feels aggressive anyway.
Yeah. So Arif, you're pretty close. 29.25.5, which is almost on the nose to assuming that McCarthy starts after the bye, because you've got 12 games left in the season. That's an average of 244 yards per game over 12 games, which I think is about exactly what you would expect from a rookie quarterback. Kirk averaged 263 for his career, and he's above average. I think 243 is right on the money, which is interesting. And that would also correlate with, in their opinion, 18.5 touchdowns.
I picked 12. Well, I did do the halfway as opposed to the 2/3, so I guess that's actually consistent.
I would hammer the under if I were.
Yeah, I'm taking.
Sounds like people have been. because
Oh,
that
wait,
was like
hold
300
on.
yards further.
Okay, we have someone in chat, which we have to verify because you can never trust chat, saying there's a disclaimer that he has to start all the games. There's no way no way. What kind of season long First
Don't
of
see
all,
that.
what kind of
That
like
might be an
2,900
inferior
yard
sportsbook.
prop expects you to start all the game? Nick Snyder, come on. He's going to start all the games, but he's not going to pass over 3,000 yards.
That feels like the kind of assumption a sportsbook would make with like what Arif was talking about, like huge margins for error. To answer the like, what do they know part? Like they don't know any more than anybody knows. The Vikings don't even know who's going to start after the bye week. Like they haven't answered that question yet. There's not secret information that's waiting to be revealed that the sportsbook secretly knows. I feel like people do that with the sportsbooks a lot. They do that with the draft props like a lot.
Yeah, the sportsbooks know
but
nothing with the draft props or free agency props. It turns out,
yeah, it's like they know who it's like everybody already knows how the draft is going, and it's a secret, and they're just like waiting for someone to leak it. And oops, the sportsbook leak. No, they didn't. Nobody knows what's going to happen.
So I'll say this about betting markets. Historically, betting markets are quite good, but that is contingent upon a high volume of tickets and a high volume of dollars.
And quite good is like 60-40, which is fantastic, but like that's statistically you have to get your mind into like it's still very probabilistic.
Yes. And so they're quite good at point spreads. They're very bad at free agency. I mean, I have a piece over at Wide Left that like asks how good are they at, figuring out free agency landing spots, and they're awful at it. And often they contradict each other. One sportsbook will have a player's favorite team being the one that he's on, and another one will have it as a different team. We had multiple sportsbooks with, I think, 3 different teams for Kirk Cousins in the same week as the favorite. And so you can't just say, hey, they know something, because it's like, well, which one? Which one knows something? Because they can't all be right. I don't think they have a secret knowledge. It's really just about the amount of money coming in and the number of tickets, being purchased. And one thing I want to add is I wonder if the normalization of sports betting will increase or decrease the accuracy of sports books. I genuinely don't know. My guess is decrease, probably not a ton, but as you reduce the number of sharps that are in the market that are using sophisticated models and stuff like that, and encouraging relatively casual gambling, especially with especially in these first couple of years where we've got deals like protected plays and stuff like that, you're probably not getting a ton of people super invested in the decision they're making for the bet that they're taking. So I'm guessing over the next couple of years, they'll be a little bit less accurate before the market corrects again.
Interesting.
Yeah. Once you get, once a line has been up for a while too, it is, it's pretty much wisdom of crowds. Like when the line first goes up and then like the sharps will hit it and that will kind of set what you usually see if you see the line early. But once it's been up for a few weeks, it's more determined, at least in the sports books that I've been able to like talk to people. It's like more determined by what people like by the actual betting market pushing the lines up and down and stuff like that than it is like anybody's specific knowledge.
Robert Tonyan signed with the Vikings while Braun was away. My question to you guys, could he be a tight end 1? He continues his NFC North tour after some very good years with Green Bay, a bad year with Chicago, now with Minnesota, where he competes with $2 million player Johnny Munt, blocking tight end Josh Oliver, and something called, I think Nick Muse is still around. I think Nick Muse.
Yeah, the cat moves.
Tonyan is 30 years old. He is not a blocker, but he has far more on his resume from an offensive production standpoint than an Oliver or a Munt. You're not holding a roster spot.
Let's not forget that Robert Tonyan did sign with the Detroit Lions as an undrafted free agent. So this is the completion
the bingo
of the
card.
NFC North tour. Yeah,
it's very good.
Actually, pretty rare.
He's bringing all the divisional secrets to Minnesota, but I do not think it's outlandish at all to think that Tonyan could take over for Munt, the presumed, I think, tight end 1, or maybe 1A, 1B with Oliver,
I mean, you're
with
saying
He's
he's
gotta
got to
have a
one
good
in terms of targets, right? Because I think Josh Oliver will dominate in terms of snaps.
I think for tight end, you have to say snap counts because blocking's important for the tight ends.
Well, yeah, then I think Josh Oliver's tight end 1.
Maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
then let's think in production because Josh Oliver, I don't think will lead in production.
In receiving.
Well, I don't, because I think Oliver would come out when it's not 12 personnel, right? Like he wouldn't be the 11 personnel tight end; it'll be the blocking tight end. So I don't know if he actually would lead in. Like,
maybe.
snap
I mean,
counts.
they see
It's just a
Johnny
different
Munt.
position.
They see Johnny Munt also as primarily a blocking tight end, like the way they talk about him.
But so when they were in 11 personnel last year with Hawkinson out, Johnny Munt was the guy, right?
Right, because they
was the
didn't.
tight end.
Right, because of the way that they had to practice in training camp. Right now, they practice in training camp without
just do it
TJ
different.
Hawkinson. Yeah, I think so. Maybe, I don't know.
That's
Obviously,
where
like,
I'm at. Like,
Oliver
I think
never
say,
exceeded 40 snaps last year, just for
like
reference.
I think they say Josh Oliver, you're Josh Oliver, you do the Josh Oliver thing, you be the blocking tight end, and for this more versatile role, we need an 11 personnel. We have a competition between Johnny Munt and Robert Tonyan, and I guess Nick Muse can play too.
Nick Muse also is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just anticipate, just because of the way that they've talked about the perceived talent differences between Oliver and other tight ends in general, that they'll probably have Oliver out there a little bit more often. They did talk about getting him more involved in the receiving game when they signed him. Obviously, that didn't happen, and obviously that's a fairly normal talking point for when you sign a blocking tight end. Be like, hey, he's a better receiver than you all think, and no, he's not. But
hey, he had that really cool screen on the opening play in the whiteout game against Detroit.
Yeah.
Or I think it was a check down. He was just alone and he like scampered for like
no one covered. It was like the CJ hand. Yeah,
he led the team to that whole half.
You're supposed to cover that guy, but I do think they want to get him more involved in the receiving game. So I'm just gonna stick it out there and say I think Josh Oliver leads in snaps. In terms of receptions, I think it's Jesus. I mean, Tonyan is coming off such a bad year. Obviously, Cole Kmet took the priority in terms of tight end.
Yeah, that was Kmet related, I think.
But I don't know. Was it like 17 catches or something like that? I don't remember.
17 targets, 11 receptions. I'm washing it out.
Come on.
The quarterback play was abysmal. They had multiple guys who they had
11 catches.
Agent.
He lost his job to a guy and got cut.
He's 2 years removed from a 67 target, 500-yard season with
correct.
Rodgers.
He is 2 years removed from it.
So 1 year in between in a bad situation. This is a great buy low signing.
Yeah, it's a buy low. Let's see if he's still
like
got any juice. But like, I think he's like just as likely to like get real offensive contribution as he is to just straight up like get cut before the third preseason game.
Yeah, I think that's where you're at. I think it's like the Kendall Wright. It's like I remember him. He was pretty good for a little bit. Doesn't mean he's going to be good now. Doesn't mean that he's going to even make the team. But if he does, there's probably something exciting there. I think it's very difficult to be like good and also have 11 catches. Like that if you're a receiving tight end, at least, like I know that Cole Kmet was the primary tight end. I know that quarterback play was rough. 11 catches. I feel like we're making way more excuses than we need to. He came into the league kind of older. He was always kind of he blew up as an older tight end with the Packers. I don't know. Like, I just feel like he's closer to washed. I mean, he's 30 already. He's closer to washed than he is going to take over the tight end targets. And obviously the Vikings will target, Jefferson and Addison more. And, we'll see what happens with the other receivers. Maybe Jalen Naylor, makes good on the camp excitement he had last year. But I don't see him like taking the tight end one role. I think there's a really good chance that Johnny Munt outcompetes him for a receiving tight end role, I guess. And then the offense is going to look a lot better when Hawkinson returns.
I will agree with you on that. I just don't think that Tonyan is competing with much of anything. I certainly don't think they have enough loyalty to Nick Muse.
Problem is, neither is he. Like, he is also not much of anything. So it's just, it's like the interior defensive line competition. It's like a whole bunch of like just a guys that maybe wouldn't make other teams. Let's hope one of them's good. Yeah.
This team kind
How
of
many
like
rosters does he make?
They don't love churning the depth. They like keeping the depth in the building. Kind of a funny trend that they've established.
Sometimes.
They had like a lot of roster spots open this year. I don't know how true that is.
It depends. Like they like their guys. They've got their Johnny Munns.
Yeah. Sometimes they find a guy and they're like, this guy. But other than that,
and they're Brandon
this
Powell's.
guy.
But like,
this guy.
this guy.
Bullard. They love Bullard.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I bet I could think of one other.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. We're waiting.
Quessenberry. They brought back Quessenberry.
They did bring him back.
Did they love Quessenberry or do they have Quessenberry? I feel like there's like a difference.
Oh, they love Quessenberry. Let me tell you. Quick pause, and then we will ask the question, what is the Vikings equivalent of what the Wolves did last night? That's next. Minnesota Football Party. We spent a lot of time breaking down the Vikings schedule, and now that you know the dates, you know the times, you can get tickets. You can go on Gametime with their killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and you can get tickets to the home opener, September 15th against San Francisco. I'm going because I use Gametime. You can also check out the Texans game. You could go to the final home game against the Packers. There are some great possibilities. There are some great deals using the Gametime app with the lowest price guarantee. Gametime credits you 110% of the difference if you find better seats. With zone deals, you choose a section. Gametime chooses the seats for great savings. And with their priority last-minute deals, if you want to wait till the weekend of, save up to 60% with last-minute buying for sports, as well as concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $20 off. LOCKEDONNFL. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Hoops Junkies will enjoy these final moments. The Minnesota Timberwolves won Game 7.
We have one of three dedicated basketball watchers on this podcast.
I think Arif bleeds. I think Arif is more of a fanboy than we give him credit for. I don't know about
I'm an extremely fair weather fan. I want to make that
so. Braun, you put out a poll yesterday about the game. What was it again? So
I'm not a basketball fan. I do not claim Wolves fandom. I grew up going to Wolves games and stuff, but I just don't really care about basketball. It's fine. It's nobody's fault. But hey, look, man, everybody's going crazy for the Timberwolves. Should I watch or am I bad luck? Because I didn't want to mess with anyone's superstition. And everyone yes won the poll. Yes, do watch. And they said if it's going bad, turn it off at halftime. And then I fell asleep and I woke up with 6 minutes left in the game, so I missed everything.
You missed the pivotal portion where the Wolves turned it around. So clearly your nap helped.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's nap time every game, I think.
5:30 local? Oh no, you traveled. Right. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I'm jet lagged and very messed up.
What's going on? Okay, yeah.
I'm thinking of the Vikings equivalent of a come from behind Game 7 win against a nemesis, a past champion in this case, on the road. It is hard to think of Vikings moment like that. The Minneapolis Miracle is probably the most similar because of how shocking it was. It got them to a conference final. It was against kind of a kryptonite team from their past. There's not a lot of moments that live up to what happened last night.
I can't think of anything. So I looked up any games that the Vikings played in, playoff or otherwise, where at halftime they were down by 2 scores. I feel like that's not as egregious as being down by 20 at the half in an NBA game, but they do have runs, so who's to say? And there's only 5 games where that's happened and they won. 2 of them, of course, occurred in 2022. But
and the Broncos game in 19.
Yeah,
another one. Yeah.
And so,
against Denver. There you go.
Against Denver. Hey. Yeah. But these are all relatively low stakes games. They should not have been down against the Colts at all, actually, much less by 2 scores. Whereas against, the Nuggets, being down by 20 points, that sucks. But the Nuggets were supposed to be a better team. They're the defending champions. They've got the MVP. You understand where that's coming from. So having a comeback against a team that good is fantastic. Having it in such a high stakes environment is fantastic. Having it occur with all of these fantastic and interesting and improbable storylines, it would be as if, like the Rudy Gobert turnaround, right? Would be as if Josh Oliver caught, a 40-yard pass deep down the seam. You're like, okay, yeah, there's nothing they can do now. Josh Oliver's catching bombs. They're done.
Their night.
Yeah,
didn't somebody say when he made that, it's like, oh, we're winning.
Yeah, Ant.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Ant's like, we got it now.
I don't
But,
think the Minneapolis Miracle is that bad of a comparison. It doesn't quite exactly line up because the deficit was different, and the Vikings were leading at halftime, and then they gave up the deficit. But it's like a swingy game. It felt really over, and then it wasn't over, and now they can advance to the semifinal. I think it feels okay.
Yeah, I think that's the closest you can get is okay, right? So like the Bills game, fine. The Colts game, fine. But they just don't have the stakes or the expectation. The closest I could find outside of the Miracle is probably they had a Week 15 game against the Eagles in 1978 where they came back from down like 13 or something like that, which put them, into better playoff contention, right? They were going to make the playoffs either way. So like, yeah, otherwise there's like a bunch of Week 3, Week 4 games. There's a game against the Packers that, they got into overtime as a result of it. That was in 2005, but that was early in the season, and the Packers were not particularly good that year. So I don't know, but it feels like this is a relatively singular moment, and I think the Miracle is as close as we're going to get to something that kind of matches the feeling,
the euphoria. Because I think the euphoria. Like I've watched a lot of Minnesota sports. I think this is behind it. Like this is number 2. Hard to beat a moment like the Miracle. I don't think it will be beaten. I think this is right there. It was a Mount Rushmore Minnesota sports event.
Did you see the Russell Dunlap comment? I think that's a good one. Think the Miracle is the series with the Nuggets rather than just Game 7, right? Up and
early
then
lead.
down.
Ooh,
right.
That's very good.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
True.
But yeah, especially because Case Keenum played such a critical role. But yeah, Brett Favre versus 49ers was nuts. It sucks.
That was a great one.
Week 2 or week
pretty
3
great.
game, right? But that was so good
For a regular
so
season
good.
game. Yeah.
I
find it. Go ahead.
I think the fundamental element of all of these is belief, right? You don't have belief, and now you do, right? That's like the Vikings coming back against the Colts was great. I feel like I got a little bit less out of the game than a lot of people because I didn't come out of that game having a strong faith that the Vikings were a team of destiny. I did come out of that Miracle game thinking that though, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the important thing is that they have to give you every reason not to believe and then give you every reason to believe. That's what the Wolves are doing, right? And that's what the Miracle did, and that's what the Favre game did. A lot of these other games, I don't think they do that.
It's interesting that that's the Favre game we always talk about and not the playoff win.
Yeah, right. We love
it wasn't an interesting game. It was over by halftime, which is a much better result, but it's not the one
it's great. Yeah, but it's not iconic.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about addiction, Luke Braun. It's the things that those moments do to our brain. It's there's such a visceral response that that's why it's seared when there isn't drama, when you dispatch of a team so thoroughly, like 34-3 against the Cowboys, or even the Monday night game against the Packers, it doesn't hit the same way to get that sports high.
Sometimes it doesn't hit. Game 6 hit pretty hard. That's the biggest playoff win in NBA history or something like that, right?
One of them. Yep.
Yeah, and I was that game I'm gonna remember pretty well. Sometimes if it is a thorough undressing, you can, but it has to be like a unique style of beatdown. It cannot be a methodical, like the Wolves did it with style in Game 6.
Wild Game 7 against Avalanche twice, by the way. They've done that. Yes, very awesome. I think that's also on the Mount Rushmore. But is it disconcerting at all that the Vikings may get beaten to this title among the
why would it be disconcerting?
No.
I think I always, and it wouldn't be disconcerting to me, wrong word choice. I think I always thought that the Vikings would be kind of the curse breaker in town. And I know that the Twins have won titles. It's been 33 years now.
That's the least Vikingsy thing you can be, is a curse breaker.
The most cursed
I get
team
what Sam's
offers the
getting
biggest
at.
catharsis.
I get that there's this like ego to it, but for one, there's so many overlap fans that are going to be really, really happy. Like, who cares? But also, I do think that that takes a little bit of pressure off the Vikings. So if anything, it's like it can be good for your headspace to be like, oh, look, Minnesota sports team can be done.
Yeah, I would have preferred it if it were the Vikings, of course, for a number of reasons. The first of which is that I'm primarily a football fan, not a basketball fan, and also I would personally profit from it. I can't ignore that fact.
Yeah.
But also I think that there is something to be said about the primacy to which the Vikings take in the state. Like, people are much more Vikings fans than they are Timberwolves fans, or they were before the season started anyway. And I think that the depth of attachment people have to the Vikings is greater, in part because the Timberwolves are a younger team, and also because they just don't make the playoffs as often. As Kat pointed out, right after the game.
That was so great.
That was so funny. How much do you want us to lose, man? I mean, the Timberwolves have been a miserable team in the way that the Vikings weren't. The Vikings have been a tantalizing team, right? And so they always make you buy into their belief, right? It's like the last time a Timberwolves team was this good was like 2004, literally 20 years ago, right? So I don't know.
Are they the basketball Lions?
Kinda, yeah.
I mean, the parallels are insane. They were like the bottom dwellers for decades, and now they made a run to the conference championship. Like,
but I believe
hand in hand walking up the mountain.
I don't want it to end the way it ended for the Lions. That would suck. That would be probably a 3-0 lead, and
you got a slingshot past the Lions now. Use them, pull yourself up, slingshot past them.
Yes.
Like, but I think that there's much more of a cultural significance attached to the Vikings. So it feels like not an opportunity lost, but it feels like something could have been done. I don't know.
Because
there is, as we wrap here, there is a fun momentum of a playoff series that really gets the fans lathered up, I think, more than a singular football game, just because of how the NBA playoffs is a 2-month experience that brings you along and brings people on as it goes.
Easy to forget that.
I mean, I didn't know basketball could be played on May 20th and beyond, but that's our show today. Minnesota Football Party, Locked On Sports Minnesota. We'll be back Thursday. Luke Inman might make his return from his international travels. We'll get the gang back together and schedule Luke Braun's wing eating contest. That's all coming up in the coming days on the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. See ya.